Hello, everyone. I'm Elisabeth Laville from Utopies. I guess that when the music stops, we need to talk. So that's now. Very happy to be with you this morning, along with Lidewij Edelkoort, Fimmano. I'm just going to introduce them in a minute. We're going to talk design and manufacture today, especially around this exhibition called La Manufacture, Love of Labor, that Philippe and Lee have been co-created at Gare Saint Sauveur, I think, in Lille for World Design Capital 2020. We're going to talk design, and obviously we live at a time where design is being redefined or being challenged. I would even say that it's the end of design as we know it, as Lise just said wrote about fashion in her anti-fashion manifesto in 2019, a few years ago. As a starting point, I would like to quote Clive Hamilton, who's an Australian economist, who says, consumption is essentially about people buying things they don't need with money they don't have, as people they don't like. And in an old-fashioned perspective, this could define the historic role of designer. We remember that quote by Raymond Levy saying that in the 50s, that ugliness does not sell well, and suggesting that the designer's role, in fact, used to be to help things sell. Of course, we know that this is not relevant anymore. We're going to discuss that with Lee and Philippe, because the point is not anymore about producing more stuff so we can sell more. I remember discussing that with Philippe Stark 20 years ago, and he was saying that, in fact, the new designer's right would be to question the product's right to exist, especially if an object that already exists, if there's already a product that exists and works pretty well. Because if such is the case, then there's no point repeating or reinvent a product that already exists and works well, because it would have huge consequences on consumption of natural resources, on climate change, biodiversity loss, as well as on impoverishing consumers for no added value, or even dulling people's mind, because all the advertising you need to do to be able to sell something people don't need. I remember also Bill McDonough, another designer from the US, saying that design is the first signal of human intention, and always asking, is that really the plan? Is that the plan to have single-use plastic in the ocean? Is that our plan? And if it's not our plan, then what is the alternative? And I think that now, especially in the middle of the COVID crisis, I was going to say after the COVID crisis, but let's say in the middle of the COVID crisis, there is a strong need for sustainability-driven paradigm shift of design and production, strong need to reinvent the way we produce things that are really needed, where they are needed, with materials and manufacturing processes that are compatible with the limits of the planet. Another aspect is that we find the crisis after crisis, that in most regions and countries, we have disindustrialized and removed or reduced our manufacturing capacity. And we have a lack of self-sufficiency that is becoming a problem for climate, for jobs, for economic development, for resilience, etc. Utopies have conducted studies on self-sufficiency of French cities on manufactured goods, and we found that the self-sufficiency rate index of French cities is only 8% for the best performers, which are Paris and Lyon. And the average is 3%. So only 3% of what we consume in terms of manufactured goods come from the area. Come from the region. Hopefully, we see a lot of new approaches to relocalize manufacturing and production using local resources, either renewable or from the circular economy, recycled. We see also strong connection to harnessing the power of the digital to connections with creative communities throughout the world, open source networks using data, digital factories that can produce small series adapted to local needs, platforms to share key resources and services, etc. Those are very fascinating questions that you, Lee and Philippe, address in the exhibition that you have co-created in Gare Saint Sauveur. I think it's till the beginning of November, so we all have time for those of us who haven't seen it yet. So the exhibition is called La Manufacture, a Labor of Love. And it's in the context, I mentioned it already, of the program of World Design Capital for Lille Metropolis. I particularly love the title, I must say, which reminds me of the quote by Khalil Gibran, "Work is love made visible." So I really like this this idea. And of course, it's very interesting to have this conversation about how to promote economic and social development through design and manufacturing here in Lille, even though none of us is Lille, I think, I assume. But because Lille is a city with a very strong history of creation, obviously, manufacture and craftsmanship. So I'm very honored to have both of you and the Trend Union Studio to discuss these topics. Just a quick introduction of each of you. Lidewij Edelkoort is a trend forecaster, publisher, educator, exhibition curator. Obviously, your company, Trend Union, produces tools for designers, weavers, strategists, art companies around the world. A few years ago, you published a very much talked about anti-fashion manifesto, which was a call, in fact, to reinvent fashion. You also are the Dean of Hybrid Design Studies at Parsons in New York, where you have founded a Textile Masters. You've been named one of the most influential people in fashion by Time magazine. You are widely considered one of the most, or the most influential people in contemporary design. And in 2020, I hope we'll have time for you to tell us more about it. You started the World Hope Forum as a platform to inspire the creative community to build or to rebuild a better society. Philippe, you're a trend analyst, design curator and writer, contributing to Trend Union's forecasting books, magazines, strategic studies for many in fashion, interior design, and lifestyle. With Lee, you have co-created exhibitions for museum institutions around the world, including in Tokyo, in La Gaieté Lyrique in Paris. A few years ago, you co-founded Talking Textiles, which is an ongoing initiative to promote awareness and innovation in textiles through exhibition, publications, design prize, free educational program. So a lot of activities, obviously, from both of you. And to start with, I'd very much like the two of you to tell us more about the objective and the content, probably, of this exhibition, and maybe the 12 different themes that you have developed in this project. I know we had some slides, so we're not able to see the pictures, but we're going to have to use our mind, which is what designers do. Huh? So I don't know which of the two wants to start telling us about the exhibition. Know that. It's okay,
you were finished. Sorry. Thank you for the introduction. You told almost everything, so I might as well go. But I'm going to try to go a bit more specifically into all this subject matter. First of all, I'm in the Netherlands right now because it's the eve of the Dutch Design Week, which is unfortunately, of course, only virtual this time. And as of last night, this country is in a lockdown. So I guess I will have to leave very quickly. And this morning I took a coffee in a coffee bar opposite the hotel. And the woman said to me that she really liked her first lockdown, the way I also liked it. And then she said, then afterwards, we went back to the old same thing as usual. And I feel now it is almost like a retry, that I have a second time to maybe for now find out what I really need to do. So it's very interesting that this second chance, she said, I have a second chance to understand I need to change my ways. So this is what we are in the middle of, trying to find out new ways of living, making, taking time differently, taking care of resources and taking care of people and planet. This is all of this is never done, as you know. In the most production processes, don't really care about all these things, and this is why we made this exhibition in Lille called La Manufacture to really bring together a new generation of designers which do care and which are proving that they care by the way they reinvent production processes. So the main focus is on production, which is going in many, many directions. It's very super interesting. But the focus is also, of course, on the introduction of how to include people and workers into the process. It's also how to take care of the planet with the materials we use or recreate or create together with nature. And the whole thing is called labor of love, because we believe that labor is going to be a very rare thing, and that artificial intelligence is going to steal most jobs on this planet, and that we will have to reinvent what it is to realize ourselves and to have activities which we still call work, but which are maybe more close to forms of amateurism, because it's not necessarily anymore a job like before. And this is why it's a labor of love, because this is we really want to do, we desire to do, and how we can reinvent our own lives, including activities in production. Labor of love is also important because working men's clothes are very much in fashion today. It's a really big influence. And the beginning of the exhibition is actually all about workers' blue and how workers can be introduced into the creative field of making. And we show that with blue aprons, work aprons, which are transformed by the way, together with work, to really see how can we add things, even digital things, to our own life. This exhibition for us is very important because it's a landmark exhibition. It's a moment in time, and we made a book, therefore, which is like a little Bible, a little fat book, which is every page giving you all these new recipes of what people are doing, what they're inventing, how they use newspapers, how they use stone, how they use limestone, nature to create things. And so it's like a summary of today. And I highly recommend this to you because it's a survey. It's maybe not 100%. Maybe we don't have every, almost encompasses all the different techniques and inventions which are there in the world of design. So it's also a great bravo for the designers, because they are all, since they started after their graduation, participating in the world and trying to really make this a better society. So very conscious people who do still want to create. It's not that we want to stop creating. I don't believe in a world of non-production and non-consumption. I just believe that we should produce better, consume better, enjoy more, take more time, and so on. So I guess, Philip, you are going to introduce the themes. If I have little things to add, I will break in, but I will try to do my best to make it perfect, audible. So up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you already covered the main purpose of the exhibition, which is really to highlight how this generation is leading us in towards a better future, taking care of people as well as the planet. And I think what's most remarkable about them, apart from the fact that they create their own process, their own machines, their own techniques, they're sort of hacking technology in order to make things that are hybrids between craft and production and industrial serial design. I think what's also you can feel in the exhibition is that they're also defining new ways of receiving payment in the future. It's really a new world economy where they will be working because of labor of love, because it's them getting satisfaction for what they're doing, maybe through altruism, helping other people, recycling and upcycling, therefore not taking natural resources from the planet, but actually, recycling and cleaning up the mess. So there's this whole new circular philosophy that comes out of this generation. And we have 70 designers in the exhibition, which are, I think, really defining this new period that we're going to be living in after the crisis, or after the pandemic. As was mentioned, there are 12 different themes in the exhibition. In a way, they're almost like trends in materials, in the way that we develop ideas. So I'll just explain a little bit about them. But of course, as Lee mentioned, you can find all the information in the catalog. The first one and most important, I would say, is the idea of creating community, which is trying to give examples of social design and designers who are really helping others that are less fortunate, whether it's the homeless or people with special needs, or even just helping the planet, I would say. Of course, because Lee and I are very passionate about textiles and the revival of the textile industry, especially in a region such as Lille, we have a section called Weaving Wonder, which is about the importance of textiles in interior design today and in design in general. And this includes an amazing pop-up weaving studio from Daniel Harris, who started the first weaving studio in London in over 100 years, which is called the London Cloth Company. Of course, everywhere in design today, recycling and cleaning up pollution is a major reference point. But as I mentioned, it's really about how to mine for materials that are already existing. So how to use what we already have around us. Yesterday, Apple just launched the 12th iPhone. So you can imagine the amount of, telephones and technology and surplus materials which are just circulating around the planet, which is all unnecessary, of course. This idea of preconceived or pre-designed obsolescence, it's completely old-fashioned. So there is a whole generation who are accumulating remnants, as we call it, who are using e-waste and other debris from society in order to make new design. A lot of the materials are also being transformed. So we have a section called Working Wood, which is about how designers are reinventing the use of wood to give it back its identity, to give it back its essence, to show that it comes from nature and that it's not an industrial material. Similarly, we have another section called Carving Stone, which is about taking the remnants of the stone industry and instead of mining, actually using discards and rejects from the marble and granite industries. There's a big trend in materials today, which is not just about recycling, but also creating pulp-like matter, whether it's papery textiles or papier-mâché design, everything which is looking not just at recycling paper, but also just a pulpy consistency. It could be with other materials such as wood chips or even plastic. Then we have a continuation of a long-term philosophy and trend in design, which we call post-fossil, in a section called Excavating Remnants, which is looking at contemporary designers who are like Fred Flintstone and Wilma Flintstone, for that matter. They are creating contemporary fossils that look completely prehistoric, but that are made using new techniques and philosophy. We also have a section called Throwing Earth, which is all about the importance of using clay and soil as a primal material in design, especially in ceramics. Similarly, we have a section on the use of metals, the idea of forging alloy, almost like an alchemist, which is looking at the transformation of metals, but also the recycling of metals, especially e-waste and urban mining. And then we have a section on the importance of industrial glass, but also on hand-blowing glass, which is looking at glass also as an alchemistic material and transformative, and people that are reinventing the medium. And the idea of giving back the essence of materials, which is so important to designers who are all focusing on material. As Lee says, material is the message in today's design. We have a section called Gathering Fiber, where these hunter-gatherer designers are almost like farmers. They're creating their own fiber development. They're investigating and studying the essence of what fiber means, giving it back a very wild and almost savage quality, or exploring new identities for fiber. And there are incredible pieces from young designers as well as. And then last but not least, the most important part of the exhibition is the idea of growing new materials, which of course is this concept of growing design from organic processes, bioresins, biomaterial, biophilia, really replicating the essence of nature, whether it's using mycelium and mushrooms, or using seaweed, or growing crystals with salt, or decomposing matter, anything which is creating really this new essence of biodesign through not just materials, but also growing furniture. And one of Lee's favorite pieces is this concept that she's had for many, many years, which now comes to fruition. So maybe, Lee, you should talk about this project from Full Grown in England.
Yeah, they decided a few years ago that it would be interesting to see if we could actually harvest design from trees. So they created an orchard which is growing chairs and lamps. It takes 7 years for a chair to be grown and about 3 years for a lamp. So it's still very expensive because a lot of labor of love to help this help nature into its perfect form and to harvest it also just in time for us to sit on it, to have the right structure, the right strength. But it's amazing to see that you have it in all these chairs, all along, and you can just take them like an apple. So this is the future of design, where we will be able to bioengineer form, maybe even also building cabanas and things like that. And where we don't have to first produce material and then cut it and then manufacture. We would manufacture to business. This will be done in stone, in wood, in grasses, in different materials. It will bring the universities of agriculture together with design institutions, and it will be an amazing journey because this is where we open the door to a completely new area.
Okay, Philippe, are you done with the 12 themes? Have we been through the exhibition? Yeah? Okay,
conceptually,
wonderful.
yes.
Okay, wonderful. I was thinking, listening to you, when I can go to Lille to see the exhibition. Now I'm frustrated that this is not happening for real in Lille. Okay, wonderful. Maybe a few questions. When we prepared this session this morning, there was one point about factories, and I like the fact that the exhibition is called La Manufacture, using a bit of an old-fashioned term that is now used also by makers, fab labs and stuff, because it's true that factories are seen today as polluting elements in our lives, like, of course, environmentally speaking, but also visually, etc. Probably why we've kicked them out of cities and sometimes far from us in southern countries. But the question is, can we make the factory or the manufacturer great again, seen from people? And can design help be a tool to rethink our relationship with the factory and to turn the factory into a place of positive creation, something that, as you said, will be positive both to people and the planet? Is that possible? Or are there technologies, techniques that designers are reinventing for the future that can help us achieve that, in a way, paradigm shift for factories?
I believe it's truly possible, and actually several young individuals or groups are buying up old manufacturing plants to do their thing. They completely changed, of course, the part of manufacturing. They adapted to today's world and standards, but they do sometimes use the clay, which already was used in this manufacturing plant for a long time, or they continue the production as a cottage industry more than an industry, small scale, with more variation and more organized towards contemporary life. But for instance, in the case of Daniel Harris with his London Cloth Company, he is crazy about old machines. So he's buying up 3-4 machines, and then from machine he makes a new one. And so by and large, he started to collect all this junk, and the junk becomes amazing park. And he's there with his cat doing his weaving, and he's becoming pretty famous somehow in the field of fashion because it's such sturdy, real old-fashioned, very old-fashioned wool cloth. But recently, he started to work for NASA because NASA needs to have metal yarn woven to make the costumes for the astronauts, to make them heavy so they. And so the only way to weave this metal yarn is on this old-fashioned analog looms, because on the modern looms, it's dark. So the fun thing is that you need something very old analog to do something completely futuristic. And this is what we keep seeing, is that we are taking elements of the past and the future and we bring them together in today. This is why it all becomes these hybrids, where we use old and new almost continuously into a new, bringing it into a new fold. So it's very exciting.
Is this what I read an article a few months ago about what they called Paleo Innovation, which was about taking the best of the part and mixing it with the, I don't know, Fab Labs makers, 3D printing, whatever. So really trying to take the best from the past and so to speak the best of the future to.
Yeah, I believe that our real answers are in the very far past and in the indigenous part of our planet. And what our work will be going to in the future, because we don't think that with our own recipes we're going to make it. So we do know that we need to retrace. This is why the excavation is so important. We need to retrace the way people invented waterways, building, a community, and so on. And after this study, we can adapt that to our own future, and hopefully then we will survive.
Listening to you about the London cloth company, I was thinking, and the I don't recall the name, but the people who are growing chairs in the UK. I was thinking this is also about foreground. This is also about seeing time differently, very different relation to time. I was thinking also about Weston, you know, the shoe manufacturer, who's using some very old machines as well for to work with leather, and they are now committed to produce the pieces they need to fix the machines, because nobody else in the world is using these machines anymore. And they also have a different relation to times, because I know that for some steps of leather tanning, for example, they use the old way, you know, a maceration of oaks, whatever, where they put the leather, and it takes 3 months as opposed to 3 days when you use chemicals. So I think are those designers you show in the exhibition also have a different relation to time, and how could we maybe elaborate a bit on this?
Well, everything in society since the late 1990s has been all about speed. Everybody wanted everything faster delivery, digital, faster internet, faster production, faster travel, you know, and this pandemic has shown us exactly that these systems don't work anymore, and that the mess that we're in is completely because of this obsession with fastness. And all of the designers in the exhibition, I can say, are thinking about slow. They're thinking about slow production and local production, and of course greener solutions, but also just not overproducing. You know, the definition of success today is keeping your studio alive and giving work to your employees. You don't have to become the next Jeff Bezos. You don't have to take over the world. This idea of mass growth and shareholder profits and you know, producing in order to give design to the masses is completely old-fashioned. You know, it's more about, I would say, being responsible for the planet by slowing everything down. You know, we cannot avoid the growth of the population in the years to come, but we can definitely slow down the amount of consumption and production.
Both of you
because
work a lot in fashion. Wait, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Also because, wait a minute, I'm losing my train. Sorry, I just lost my idea. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, talking about both of you work a lot in. I was thinking, listening to you mentioned, Philippe, that the pandemic has shown that we must slow down. And during the first lockdown, we heard a lot of designers in the fashion industry saying, "Oh yeah, we need to slow. We're going to do collections, etc., etc." Do you think this is going to last? I mean, even second lockdown.
Well, it's not that
will we come back to le monde d'avant?
We need a few more lockdowns, I guess, to hammer it home. But it's definitely true that many designers also came together with Dries van Noten, with Armani, with others. And they were so fed up to be sort of pressed like lemons by the shareholders and by the capital just to make more and more clothes, to deliver them earlier and earlier. So we will have swimsuits, in November and cashmere in May. And so all this needs to stop because this is what creates the mess and the overproduction, which nobody knows how to get rid of, There's so much production on this earth that they all are burning it secretly. And that's very bad for our planet, but also for the karma of the people even who made those clothes. Can you imagine that you made these clothes and that they are going to end up in the landfill or burned? It's really not okay. So strangely, although there is data, the data don't seem to be able to prevent us from making much too much stuff. So that's very crazy. And most of the production processes we are showing in this exhibit are able to make products almost one by one, on demand. Also with us involved. So we might say we want it to bigger size, or we want to have another color, or if somebody is using newspaper to make new pulp, then you use only color newspaper. So I get, Financial Times lamp. You see, so it's fun the way this is going to be also make measure and pleasure.
Okay. Maybe just talk about the local dimension of production, manufacturing, sourcing. I mentioned already the fact that we have in our regions and countries, Western countries, deindustrialized, reduced our manufacturing capacity, and therefore we are very far from self-sufficiency whether we talk about food, by the way, or manufacturers. Do you think design should have profoundly local or even ultra-local, meaning either made in France or made in Lille or made in Hauts-de-France or whatever, so as to leverage local resources, so as to foster self-sufficiency?
Yeah, I was just, I'm in the middle of thinking, it's the future of fashion in all this COVID situation. And it suddenly dawned on me that the solutions are not to be the same for each country or region. And that actually, according to region or country, the solution will find themselves, if you want. So in Italy, for instance, where there's a lot of craft, definitely production will go more towards local craft, more and more local and precise and small and so on. Whereas in the United States, where everything is about volume and scaling up, I think that it will turn towards super industrial with the best possible tools. Some Japanese big firms are able to do this. So through size, they can actually make pretty clean productions and very beautiful items because they are made like in vast numbers. So if what's going to happen, I think that in each locale, there will be new recipes because the streetwear, the way people shop is different as well.
Okay, Philippe, any other comment on this idea of local, the future of design?
No, I think we've all been talking about local, and the consumer even understands it, especially because of the food industry. And so it's very easy to translate a local concept in other industries to the consumer. So I think that it's more a question, as Lee says, of finding the right recipe for each country, and that maybe also it's a mix. But I think that younger generations, if you ask them about, where they want to get their products from, they're not going to say that they want it to come from, going around the planet 10 times. They want to have something which is as low carbon footprint as possible. So I think that, as we've seen in travel during the pandemic, everybody just stayed locally and they rediscovered their own countries by traveling locally. So for the first time in maybe 60 years, we're going to be able to rediscover our local brands and local designers. So I think it's definitely something that should be promoted.
Okay, maybe some all about, I was mentioning disindustrialization, and clearly in city, for example, or Saint-Etienne in France, we have many cities that have been wounded, like Detroit in the US, by disindustrialization, either because the whole industry is going bankrupt or because living, closing, etc. And so leaving people without a job most of the time, without enough money always to sustain their living. Can design help boost social resilience, do you think, in those areas? And how so?
Yeah, because we can have smaller production units. The idea is no longer to have big industry. The idea is to really create local, adventurous sort of plants where people make things, but also where they retail things of others, where there's also hotel and restaurant, where there's destination shopping and so on. And most of all, these things will no longer be in city centers. We see already now an adieu to the city because of the situation we're living in. People discovered the outdoors very much during this pandemic. Many of my textile students finalized their studies really in the country, and they used all the resources of the country, the water, the plants, the grasses, and so on, to weave and to dye and to create. And it brings us into a very new realm. So this exodus of the city, combined with this possibility to do smaller runs, and to do them almost to on command, is going to create this very new way of making, and it's comparable to what we see happening in food, actually.
Like short circuit, producer to consumer. That's what you're referring to. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. I know that in the press kit about the exhibition, there is a mention about the philosophical concept of new materialism. This idea that, in fact, each material can be considered alive and releasing energy. This is something that designers must work with, so to speak. Can you tell us a bit more about this? And also then I have maybe a question about dematerialization, because we've been talking a lot about producing stuff, smarter stuff, better respecting the planet, etc. But is the designer's work sometimes also about not creating any dematerialization, creating a service instead of a product, etc.? So maybe that's first about new materialism.
Sorry, I'm going to take the second one first.
Okay.
It's happening already now so much. There's many design institutions which have completely dedicated themselves now to theory and to theoretical solutions, to service design and social design. The so-called sometimes boring term design thinking is born in that area. It's not always the solution, I can tell you. But I think in the end, where there will be a possibility to just have imagination, where you will be able as a consumer to sort of to see or feel the design without actually having to own it. Almost like art or projecting it. Maybe it's just an image or it's a mental image. And it's something almost like telepathy, where you will be able to sort of fold your arms around something. I have these beautiful vases here from Pita and Egg. So instead of, doing this physically, you would do it mentally. So you would maybe think about a product or an object, and you would sort of feel more this than seeing it. But this is, I think, down the road another 20, 25 years, where
Okay, wonderful.
we will be taught possibly by more spiritual walk of life. And this is also what is true in materialism, which is a part of philosophy today, which is trying to work for the right of materials to exist, like human right or children right or animal right. And this is to stop pilling the earth even more. And it's especially to say that every material, also man-made material, has atoms, has living matter, is living. So there's no inanimate stuff. Even a stone, even a pebble, actually has energy. And this energy we can sort of harvest and bring into the realm. And it could lead to a new form of a new design concept, which we called animism, which is based on the pre-religion of animism, which believes that everything has a soul and everything has the reason to live. And the day we start designing and comparing objects in this way, we will have more compassion and more égard, how do you say, more
Respect.
respect for these living objects, and therefore we will choose them better, we will cherish them more, we will keep them longer, we will give them on instead of throwing it away, and so on. It's all learning how to deal with consumption.
This reminds me a bit of what people who are fighting for animal rights say when they are not vegan. They say, okay, we can eat animals once in a while, but respecting and thanking the animal and stuff. And yeah, so it's okay. Okay, Philippe, any other comment on this new materialism concept or dematerialization as a work of designer?
No, I think what Lee has explained is really the essence of the idea, which is getting rid of the need for too much marketing and too much, creating lies to consumers by just creating products that have a soul and respecting the value of the materials so that we can appreciate them on a very new level, which has been taken out of people's minds for a very long time. So it's an exciting new period, I think, where we can become more sustainable and responsible by giving our objects a soul.
There is a question. This brings me to one question about how to affect change how to raise awareness, how to affect change, so that in fact our ways of working, our ways of producing actually do change at scale, right? And I think there is a question about the role of designers in doing that, because of design as a role to open conscience, so raise awareness, bring about change in society, creating new collective imaginaries, etc. Do you think design has a role also in affecting this change, like trying to reach a tipping point where this is not only about 10% of what is produced, but it's becoming 50%, 70%, and at the end of the day, bringing in that trend everything that is produced? How can design contribute to raising awareness, accelerating the change?
By leading by example, I guess, is the answer. But also we need legislation to ban things which are too cheap, so they are devastating for planet and people and actually killing people. And so hopefully Europe one day will wake up and just make a chart of minimum amounts of money for common objects, because we need to regulate this, because there is, retail outlets selling things really too cheap. And so it's a combination, I would say, of society, designer society, but also finance, because I think we are waiting for new banks and new finance and new ways of finance to emerge, a bit like the Trio des Banques in the Netherlands, which is a totally green humanistic bank, which you're not allowed in France, crazy enough, because they are afraid for this bank. And I think that also will make a tremendous change, because it's often the greed of the money change which is pushing towards newness for newness sake, not newness because we really feel the need. And this is where we have the conflict. If we would just work with the intentions and the intuitions of designers, then the production would be spaced out and the idea forming would be spaced out, and we would wait to find the right idea, and we would not, hurry. But because this reality and this idea that the shops need to fill up and there need to be new things, this is what creates that havoc, right? So it's all like taking like we did an exhibition now here in Eindhoven called Comma, which is really to say, let's take a pause, let's take some breathing time, let's relax and wait a little bit before we go on.
Okay, wonderful. I think we have 10 minutes left only, so we can move to the questions of the audience. There's one question about, you mentioned this idea of including workers in production, and I think Benjamin here wanted to have some maybe more examples of how to do this.
Well, there's not many people doing it yet, but it's just starting, I think, as a movement. What we show is called All About the Worker. It's a collective of a Chinese-French partnership, and they work with industry, and they involve the workers, the tailors, and so on into the creative processes. And this makes them aware more of where they are, how they work, why they work, but also the partners in the industry understand finally that there is unknown creative resources in their teams, which they could employ to make everybody feel better and be on the same map.
It's really about visibility and respecting all members of the team and saying thank you to each person for existing. It's the same thing we see now with all the essential workers. So it's about, making sure that we see everybody in society. And this About a Worker project is a great example.
This reminds me of Camif, who's a French platform selling mostly made in France furniture on a market where most furniture is coming from abroad. And they organize each year these Tours du Made in France, where they have a tour of their French-based suppliers. And increasingly, they organize creative workshops mixing the workers of theirs and their clients. So it's creative workshop, but not so much with designers. They have a few designers to facilitate the process, but essentially the creative workshops to create the next generation of furniture is really with workers from their suppliers and customers. It's something that could be related to that trend that you're mentioning.
Yes, and also it relates very much to a very big trend we are working with now, which is the age of the amateur. We have seen during COVID lockdown how creative people became overnight. Suddenly everybody sort of unleashed their inner selves to make embroideries, to make cakes, to do dances, to create films, to make costume, whatever people did. And
Music.
this is going to continue, and it might completely make this century ours, because that will be a very new page where creativity is in everybody, is allowed.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Okay. We have another question from Thomas, who's asking whether, referring to what you were saying, Philippe, about speed, the need to slow down, and he was wondering, in terms of, especially on fashion, how can we keep the fashion trends ongoing while at the same time fighting fast fashion? Is that possible, or does that mean that we'll have no more like trends, trying to run after what's next, if it's about slowing down? What's going to happen with your work, in fact, with trend forecasting?
There's two definitions of trend, which I think need to be clarified. So the first one is that the trends are always going to continue because they're part of culture. They're part of the evolution of aesthetics and where our culture is going. But what he's referring to is a marketing definition of trend, which is invented by business people and media people, which is to encourage people to buy something new because they want you to replace what you already have with something which is new. So this is a development of the advertising industry, which started after World War II. That's completely out of time with our era now. So I think that the first thing that needs to happen is to redefine people's perception of what trends are, that it's much more about sociology and anthropology, and that these phenomena are actually coming from people's need for something and people's emotional response to something. So it's not about marketing. And if we're going to fight fast fashion and be more responsible, then we need to dispel this idea and go back to maybe better styling, personal taste, eccentricity, everything that we used to be able to do to reinvent what we have. Style and trends used to be something that you did with your own wardrobe. It wasn't something that was imposed on you from somebody else's Instagram feed. So that's what I would say.
Okay, maybe one last question, and then we'll keep 2 minutes for Lee to tell us more about the World Hub, because I insist that we talk about this. But maybe just a quick question about the relationship with nature and biomimicry that you mentioned in the exhibition. Obviously, you mentioned the idea to grow chairs, to do with nature, work with nature, or be inspired by nature. How do you think mimicry can help designers build a better world? Can they work with a more interdisciplinary approach, maybe with biologists, with scientists, to take nature as an example, not as a resource, but as a teacher, and to learn from nature, how nature is doing stuff without creating pollution? And
I think that what these designers are doing is co-designing with nature. So they don't see nature as just a natural material. They are seeing nature as a partner, philosophically, technically, as inspiration, and as a technology. Biomimicry is also about designing materials and processes which mimic nature because it's a perfected process. So it's looking to nature as a very reliable, stable source of knowledge. It's a foolproof system, and it's going to outlive us. So it's really about taking the best from nature. Lee, you wanted to say something else, maybe?
Yeah, currently it's very important to look at forest, for instance, and the forest floor, and the way trees are interconnected. Many people are studying this now, and apparently their systems are much more performant than our internet. because they can prevent things, they can heal things, they can warn, they can cuddle their friendly other trees. So there is this community, and we are gradually learning that there is much more intelligence here than we expected it to be. And this is going to teach us, I think, greatly in the next decades.
And this is really related to what you were mentioning with small units producing small stuff, because it's really about distributed intelligence as opposed to concentrated in a brain, just like what you were mentioning about production in a way. Huh? It's also a model for us. So Lee, maybe as a conclusion, can you tell us more about, or maybe both of you, to tell us more about the World Hope Forum, what it is, what is its call to designers?
It's something which came up almost naturally during the first lockdown. We were together in Cape Town, and we were impressed by the way our interviews would go viral, our discussion about what COVID would mean for the future. And so we felt that maybe we have a role to play into the redistribution of creativity versus capital, I would say. So we want the creative elites, all the creatives of the world, to have a place at the table of decision making. And therefore, we have to harvest all creative ideas, open source, and so on. And we will do that by creating this World Hope Forum. We will have ambassadors in all countries, which will do their research within their regions, and then we come together with the results once a year. So it's a sort of, it's trying to answer things which the World Economic Forum, is doing for the rich. We are going to do this for us because we think that it's time now that the creative energies are part of the system. If you listen even to the fashion designers, they suffer under the whip of the economic, strengths, and we want to get rid of this. So it's really a new way to try to gather these strengths, to try to gather all this, like in the exhibition, all these production processes, all these ideas, all these fantastic new ways to tackle fashion, design, food, and so on. And we start in 2 weeks from now. It took some time, of course, to set it up. It's still baby steps, but we are going to take time because we want to listen to the new mantra. But it will happen.
And the audience can learn more about it either by following the Instagram account, which is World Hope Forum, or they can, I think, find many articles online about what the manifesto is about and how the open call is going to work. But best is to follow the Instagram account, World Hope Forum.
Okay, wonderful. We'll do that. Thank you very much to both of you. Now we need to to find time and find the possibility, in spite of second lockdown, to go to Lille to see the exhibition. Before, I think it's ending beginning of November, the 3rd of November, 8th of November.
It's the 8th of November. The exhibition is open from Wednesday to Sundays, and it's not going to be closed down because it's more than 1,000 square meters big. So there's plenty of space for social distancing in our exhibition. So please go. And if not,
wonderful, good design of the exhibition.
Yeah. And if not, there's always the book, so people can always access the book, which is this one, which has all the information. So it's a 2D version of the exhibition. And
we can find the book on your website, Trin?
Edelkoort.com.
Edelkoort.com. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much to both of you. We're just on time for the World Forum. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.